mentioned something a while ago. You were talking about systemic racism, and I thought that was absolutely beautiful because I think that's the most, um, not to sound, it's the most articulate to help me understand because, again, like you said, we're in a day and age of buzzwords and hashtags, right? Where hashtag this and hashtag and so hashtag systemic racism, and I'm going. But when you talk about it, it's just in the every little things. So when people come back and go, well, I'm not a racist, you're not. You're not. What you're saying is that's not race. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about where it's in all elements of life. And my question is that just to that, help me understand the idea of white power and racism and what and why it feels like to white people that every time there's a negative interaction, it's because they're racist. Okay, and I want to pull a little bit in here because everybody's as I'm listening to you, I'm hearing that you're not calling the cop a racist necessarily. You're saying it's systemic racism. In other words, it's in the whole culture. Because I look at it and I go, I can't judge what he did because I know cops. Okay, so that was bad cop. That was just a bad. You understand what I'm saying? I'm not. I know it's gonna sound like I'm defending him, but I'm not. I'm not defending because what's funny is there were 3 other cops and 2 of them were Asian and one of them was Asian, one Filipino. So it wasn't. I guess what I'm saying is it wasn't a race motivated thing, but it was a systemic racism motivated thing. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm just no, you're right. Because I don't like that knee jerk. Everything's racist. Everything isn't racist, but the system. See, here's where the system comes into play, and why the outrage happened so quickly. We saw that. Everyone saw that.
Yeah.
Why was it that? And to their credit, and I don't want to get into it because it's the legal part.
Sure.
It's like because they seemed like they all were fired pretty quickly. But why was it? Why weren't they arrested quick? We needed to build a case. Imagine, and I just thought, imagine me if I had my knee on the neck of a dog for 8 minutes.
Oh, I know, dude. You're going.
I'm the most hated man in America.
Right.
Michael Vick has nothing on.
Yeah, exactly.
Because and especially if it was caught on camera.
Sure. Yeah.
What? But yet, so they charged the initial guy, but like you said, the other cops are there too. Just so Black was like, why aren't they? Did his life not matter? Like, why aren't they arrested? Right. And yes, they're afforded due process. George didn't get due process. So it's like, so that to me, that's the system says we have to. There's a union, and again, I'm not disparaging.
Absolutely, no.
The autopsy, he might have had drugs in his system. He had underlying hypertension, heart. He was walking just fine until I'm just again we don't. We're observing. We don't know.
Yes, absolutely.
So
we're just observing.
The systemic part comes in. It took all these names that I know of. I have I won't go into it, but very few. I think maybe one. There was a person in Charleston who a police officer was actually charged, not just charged, but actually got a sentence. They usually get acquitted. They usually get grand jury. Sure. And so the system says, well, if I feared for my life, and again, I don't want to use that buzzer because I understand it's a hard job. They do. Yeah. Everything you do is fear for your life. So I don't say that flippantly at all.
Absolutely.
I'm just saying when we see on camera that this person was running away from you and you took aim and the only reason we even have that, we even know that because there was a camera. Without this has only been around for the last 10 years of smartphone video.
Yeah.
Think of the statistical odds. We have all these names of unarmed black men who someone just caught them on camera, and so we can see it. Think of all the times where there's no camera and there is it's a he said, she said, or he said,
who they gonna believe?
He said, who are you gonna believe? Well, this system is set up to you're already a threat because I don't want to go too in the weeds, but this country, 1787, the whole 3/5 compromise.
Yeah.
You're the 3/5, slave. So that's That's the system. And so yes, there's the
Yeah.
laws passed,
Yeah.
but again, my parents, law and order for them, and that to me that's a buzzword. Because actually, I had a
Yeah.
conversation real quick with someone who was talking about we just want law and order. Like
Right.
everybody wants law and order.
Justice. That's
But law and order to a black person growing up in the '60s and even now, it just it's the lens is
It's
different.
tainted.
The
It's
lens
it's
is
a different
They
lens.
see
Yeah. Sorry, that's not right.
they see oppressors as opposed to protect and serve. Even though some
Okay.
cops are the best people in the world, they
Right.
have community policing. They know the community. They protect and serve.
Yes.
But to some lens, they just see it as because of their personal experience or because of what we all know, goes on. They see that as oppression, and so I think, and they have no. It's hard to articulate that. Like this conversation we're having right now, like
Sure.
someone just said, I feel oppressed, and this is going on. We're having a conversation.
Yeah.
When you see a soundbite on TV, like Black Lives Matter, all we see is like kind of a mob. It's like it's a mob mentality.
So glad you brought that
You're
up.
not having a conversation across the table because that person on TV who's screaming and cursing and he's mad, he's also in a mob mentality. If you get him across the table one-on-one,
He may be a completely different person.
he may be a docile, and you might say, tell me about why, where this, I got
Right.
therapy, where is this
Right.
anger coming from? And he can explain what he may have,
Felt.
and so he's
That's what we're
he's
doing
a
here.
person.
Yeah.
On TV, you're not a person, you're just this mob just screaming, and so the lens of,
Yeah.
I just think that to me is also part of the problems. We're not having conversations, authentic conversations.
Oh, I like how you said authentic conversations because I think that is critical for us to do this.
And not everybody can because it takes a lot of maturity to get to that place where you're willing to
Yeah.
hear the other person out and not just
Yeah.
saying your side or to be able to have a back and forth, a dialogue, and
Because it takes
not be offended at everything.
right. Because I think I want to I think I could be just kind of it's not flippant, but it feels like we're so conditioned now as a culture to be offended at anything we don't agree with. Instead of just going, okay, that it's what we're talking about. It's the right to free speech. That's what we're talking about. The ability to do what we want to do, and instead of getting offended at people, going, cool, awesome, that's your belief. Let's go have a beer. You know what I'm saying? Or let's sit down and have a meal together. We can disagree on stuff. We can agree to disagree, right? I know that's kind of the phrase too. Let's, but it's not just agreeing to disagree for the sake of it's choosing to value that person enough where we go, I value you, I value your opinion. I may not agree with it, but I value it and I want to hear it. And I think that could be too is we're also, I would say probably, and this could be, is that we are trained that if I don't agree with it, I don't have to listen to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Just unfriend me, block me.
Exactly.
If you don't like what I'm saying.
Yeah, then just and I mean, I'm be honest, I'm the world's worst. Because I'm like, if you don't like what I'm saying, I'm not because I don't. It's not that I don't want people. It's that I just choose not to get offended at something. If you look at me and tell me, hey, Sean, you suck, I'm like, okay, cool. I mean, I don't like it, but it's not. But then we go sit down and have a meal. And that is a hard place, and it doesn't feel good when you get sucker punched like that. But at the same time, it's can we sit down maturely? And I think there's a phrase. There's a guy that I really enjoy named Graham Cook, and he says. He talks about, do you want to be right or do you want to be in a relationship? And I think one of the things we've been taught is I have to be right versus valuing the relationship.
Right. And to me, I know there's an illustration Robert Morris uses, which I thought was so perfect because who's to say that you're wrong? You can have two
Sure.
rights. Like if you look, he uses the water bottle, but he kind of he puts up the water bottle and says, like it says Ozarka on this side, but it just says like something else.
Texas Spring, right there. Yeah, yeah.
So he asks you, what do you see? And of course you're going to tell him what you see, and he's like, I don't see that.
Right.
Who's wrong? Who's right? You're both right.
Yes.
The problem is you didn't turn it. You actually have to turn the bottle around, really walk in the other person's shoes, because this is a problem that I feel like as a black person, too many of us, we just assume because a white person has privilege or whatever, we just think, well, why don't you walk in their shoes? Because they have some of the same, frustrations, I can't get a job because I'm not diverse, and they have so anger of not being able to provide for your family and whatever,
Sure.
And so you look at whatever the issue is, immigration, whatever, you're just like, of course you're like, they're taking my job, and so can I look at it from your angle and see the human emotion of anger, which is that anger is anger, and frustration is frustration.
Wow.
So I have to, as a black man, and I've had conversations because obviously I have a white father-in-law and white friends. I'm not putting them on blast. I'm just saying I've had conversations where I really didn't agree with what they were saying, but until I said, you know what? Let me look at it from his perspective. Let me take, because my lens is colored, because everyone's lens is colored.
Sure.
You only know what you.
I got a white lens. You got a
That's
exactly.
just how God
Yeah.
made it. But if I truly look at it from your side, I can see a white person's trigger. Everything's racism.
Yes.
I didn't own slaves. I'm sorry that happened. Like, I'm truly
Yeah.
broken about that. But what do I do now? Like, I don't own slaves, and so but we're thinking the black person.
You've been
is
listening to my conversations.
the black person is thinking like he's thinking like, well, your great grandmother. I mean, we don't know, but it's like that.
Yes.
But you're coloring your world view based on your own lens, and that works for the black community, every community. So I actually have to, and it takes humility, because you can't, like you said, because I know here's the thing, some things I know I'm right. Like when you ask, how do you know? Everywhere I go, I know it's not like racism is a myth. No, I know it's real, but also your worldview is also right. So I have to lay down, like you said, I have to lay down what I feel is I'm right, lay that down, because really, it's an us versus them thing. Like what's us, and really, and especially in the body of Christ, there's no I'm right, you're right. No, we have one Father. We have different cultures, but we have one kingdom culture, and so I don't really that's a church issue, because I don't expect you can't sign a law to eradicate that. But if I actually look at it from your side, and I can see your real anger or your real frustration, or like I don't know what to say, because everything I say, I'm gonna say the wrong thing, and so I don't say anything at all, because I'm like, I'm not saying you, I'm just saying whoever.
Sure.
So I'm thinking, why don't you say something? Well, just silence. Silence is complicity.
Yeah.
They're just like, I don't know what to say.
Right.
So so they're actually frustrated, like, help me to, and so, but no one's talking to have this, like, I don't know what to say, and we're just like, oh, well, I can help you, or I can share my experience, and then maybe you can say, so that's the key.
So that gets me to my next question, and these two questions are very much related. So it's two questions, got about in 5 different parts, so it may take us a little while, which, again, thank you guys, and I know your time is, and I know we've been going for, how long have we been going for? About an hour?
58 seconds.
58 minutes? Yeah, so we've been doing it. So my son Landry is here with us too. He's there. So he's up there. So here's, I have other questions, but I feel like these would be good to kind of, because I think you started to hit something there that's a true vein, that's really at the heart of the issue. And so because as we talked about listening and hearing one another, but the question I have for you for the first part of this question is, what do you wish the church knew about what's going on? More specific, the white church, and then how do we start to heal, and then how do we bring unity? That's a loaded question, boy.
So the first.
So what do you wish the church knew about what's going on? More specifically, the white church. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of denominations. Now, I have a diverse church. I have not many. We're predominantly white, but we do have a diverseness in our church. And Josie and her husband are absolutely amazing people, and I love them so much. James there, James for a second. But there are a lot of congregations, and that you mentioned it right there. Just say something. So many black Christians especially are saying, will my white brothers just say something? And we're over here going, I don't know what to say. I mean, I can admit that right here, that a lot of times my silence is not complicity. It is, I don't know what to say. Because, which is another question I have for you, but so when we're talking about the church as a whole, what do you wish the white church knew about what was going on right now in the protest and this tumultuous time that is being happening?
I wish we're very church people in general, white church, black church, whatever, and I know I'm just using that. And
yeah,
I
sure.
don't like those terms, but it's what it is.
It is.
We're very good at.
Because your brother is a pastor, right? Yeah. So and he of a
black church.
Black church.
Right.
So that's,
we were raised right.
Yeah.
But church, whatever denomination, we're very good at our when we're in the sanctuary, we're the sibling of the saints, and we're in church, and it's a corporate gathering. We're good at what our church we whether it's liturgical or more call and response or whatever.
Right.
We know church,
yeah.
almost too well. And so, but when you leave the church, who are you having dinner with? Because you don't know someone really well. Full disclosure, part of the Young Adults Ministry, part of the thing that they would institute is after the service, let's go to IHOP.
Yeah,
let's go to Fuzzy.
Yes, we did.
And you got to know people better over dinner than you did. Praise the Lord, let's pray.
Right.
Because when you're in a corporate setting, that's a vertical. You're there to really, truly to hear from the Lord. It's great to fellowship, and we will fellowship, but you don't have authentic, just get to know your side of life except over dinner. And I think about real quick just examples in the book of Acts where there was the Jews and Gentiles had a real schism in terms of they were at both times. Peter had a vision, Cornelius, over dinner. That's when they were saw, and later when Paul had to check Peter, because he's like, wait, you said that we're all one. It was over dinner, at house to house. So I wish, white church, black church, because it goes both ways. Because it's if you know, it could just be that would be a close friend, an acquaintance, a coworker, someone that you have more than just you would just want to say, hey, how you doing? You kind of know a little bit about them.
Absolutely.
And if you don't have that, that's where you need to start. You need to get out of your own. If everyone looks like you, thinks like you, talks like you, even in the body of Christ, that's as diverse as God is, as multifaceted as He is, and everyone that you know looks. So if you know someone who's different culture, and again, black people too, just start to intentionally have dinner with them, because I don't think this is not going to be solved or really talked about over a service, because because the focus is everyone's there and people have a facade, your church place, or you come to the altar, you're looking at them, why are they going to the altar? It's
exactly, yeah.
I'm not judging, but
you're judging.
You're going to the altar. What did you do? But over dinner or over a table, I can actually be more authentic. I can be more real, and so I wish that we would take off this churchiness of what can we do? Let's have a prayer service. I'm not knocking prayer. Prayer is the most powerful thing that you can do as the Lord.
Yes.
But we're so if you're not intentionally, and to me it's dinner because I mean, what else? When you eat with people, you just have you relax. You're just more. I just.
How many times at Fuzzy's, or even when we came to you guys' house? I mean, we just sat back and
you get to know
exactly,
people, so then you felt comfortable.
Yeah.
Because you admitted you're like, I don't know. So you felt comfortable having conversations. Whereas if you just all you knew of me was at a Sunday morning service, you may have still you're like, well, I see him, but you may not have felt that same comfort to really talk because you didn't know me as more than just someone that you might touch your neighbor or maybe pray with them. No, but actually know me. So I wish, and again, I wish this for the Black church too, because they don't, because everybody has to eat. I mean, at some point, restaurants we're gonna open. Texas is different. We're going to at least fellowship or go to their house or something. But to me, I wish you would, because I think if we always cloak it under like a church, the Sunday morning service, it has to be Monday through Saturday, just kind of intentionally. And then once you get to know people, one-on-one relationships, that breaks down this us versus them. And so that's, if we just did that, that would be a big start.
See, I think that's a great thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean, we've had the conversation a lot about intentionality in churches of bringing in diversity in leadership, and I mean that helps you recognize your biases if you have other people from other cultures and just different styles of doing things, of
preaching,
worshiping, preaching, or different things like that. I mean, there's beauty in diversity. God created diversity, so you can learn to appreciate the differences instead of just assuming that everybody likes your style. And so that makes people feel more comfortable too when they see a reflection of variety.
I love what you're saying there, and it really you because you hit the nail on the head. Even moving, because the next question was, how do we start to heal? How do we start community? The answer's simple. We eat.
Really?
How do we start to? We eat together. We fellowship. We give as a part of a part of each other's lives. Because the only way you're going to see through my eyes, and the only way I'm going to see through your eyes, is proximity.
Exactly.
That's it. We're not. So we can't even begin to have conversations. Because when we're sitting across, if there is not a proximity to each other's lives, we can sit apart at a table and it's going to be like a deposition. Exactly. And then what ends up happening is we go back into the biases, and instead of trying to work and bring unity, now we're trying to prove why I'm right and you're wrong. So we've just gone back to there's got to be a winner and there's got to be a loser. Well, what if we're both winners? What if we come with that mentality of win and win, And so, and not that we have to sit there and go, okay, I'm going to move to an area or whatnot, but it's finding even your coworkers, because we're talking a lot about the church not being centered around a central gathering, but now being influencers in the community. So finding your coworker and going and engaging them and going, hey, let me take you to lunch. And one of the things I try to teach my son, Landry, who is, he's a little bit worn out from baseball games and practice. One of the things we try to teach him is that whenever we go someplace to a restaurant, to always acknowledge the person, the waiter or waitress, or the person in the window by their name. Read their name tag. It's there for a reason. Because that makes them feel seen and it makes them feel valued. And if we can do that at work, I know this person, 2 cubicles down, but why not take them to lunch? Or why not bring them coffee? Or, just doing something.
Right. Because no one's if someone says, hey, would you mind? I just want to take you out to lunch, just because all this is going on. I kind of feel like I know you, and I don't want to be awkward, but just, do you want to go out to lunch? Like, who's going to say, no,
I'm going to go eat with you.
Right. And I'm saying I'm not saying you have to initiate pay for lunch. I mean, that's just a good gesture, I think.
Right, yeah.
But it's a good way, as an icebreaker.
Absolutely.
Something.
Are you paying? I'm paying. All right, let's go.
So I just think that is because people are really asking, what do I do? Racism is such a big problem. It's systemic. It is horrible. It's it's everywhere, and so you feel so small. What can I do?
Yes.
So to a white person, do you know a black person? Go to eat. To a black person, do you know a white person?
Yeah.
Go eat.
Yes.
And then guess what? When you eat without agenda, I mean, we have questions here, but then
Right.
but that's more an organic conversation. You get their jokes, you get their family. You have you after the lunch, your dessert, your whatever. You're just relaxed,
Yes.
and so now, if people did that on a wide scale, now your churches. So then you can invite someone to church, because if you invite someone to church and you don't have any real good relationship, then it's almost like they're a project, and God can work through that. But it's like,
come on now.
Hey man, like we're good friends, and I know that you're hurting. I just want to go to church, because ultimately, yes, the dinner, but ultimately we want to, God has if there's issues there, then God has to work on the heart, So yet He just works through interaction. I think of Jesus, the woman at the well, and Jesus, Zacchaeus, come on, I'm going to your house for dinner.
Yeah.
And Zacchaeus' life changed. It's just some things are simple. I think we make things big, like you have to. I'm all for peaceful march.
Right. I know where you're going on this one. Yeah.
Just go to eat.
Yeah.
Have dinner with someone. Lunch,
Yes.
coffee, just something.
Right.
Something to get the conversation started.
Yeah.
I love that, and I mean we could go on for it's
And check me too. Sometimes I'm an extroverted introvert. Like so once I start talking about something,
absolutely,
I will go on.
Well, I mean, our conversation, we're like, okay, we've got an hour, and then 2 hours later, we're still sitting there trying to get away from each other, but we had such great dialogue and engagement about what's going on, and that happens, and that is the beauty of when we sit down together over a meal or coffee or whatever, that we can sit there and go, okay, I only have an hour, but then as you start to the engagement, now all of a sudden it's like, wow, and it opens up the big one. This is again, this will probably end up being cut in half, or whatever to fit. But this question, I kind of want to end our time with this question, because again, like I said, we could stay up here all night, and there's hundreds of questions. This is not a simple issue that we're gonna solve in a night, or we can even begin to uncork the layers. And as we get into this, so kind of this question, here it is, and this is it. What is something that you need to hear from me, or hear from a white person, that would allow you to feel heard and understood? And the impetus for this question, of course, always, Black Lives Matter. No, all lives matter. You're not hearing me, right? It's that whole thing we're talking about. What is something that I, as a white person, in our conversations about systemic racism, and as it's there, what is something that would allow you to feel valued and heard? Again, not that it is necessarily this for everybody, but this is something, because if you don't feel heard, then you're not going to hear me, and we're right back to where we started until the next thing happens, and it blows the top off again, right, so to speak.
Right. And I'm actually going to use something that Christy texted me today, because I've been on, a couple of Zoom calls, I'm in some men's groups where people should share their experience, and so this, there's a retired elder, he's probably in his 60s, but he's retired police, and so, loves the Lord, I prayed for him, he's prayed for me, and he was genuinely saying, well, you know what, I look at what's going on, and I say, well, blue lives matter, because he's retired police.
Yeah.
So he's seeing Black Lives Matter, and a lot, again, the mob mentality. So he's just thinking, what the men in blue, he bleeds blue, and so
as firefighters bleed red, and EMTs bleed,
So he's not understanding, from his lens, and actually when he was saying that, and of course, everyone in those Zoom calls, you give them a chance to talk. Like I was thinking about, do I need to press unmute and tell him no, because I need to hear his lens.
Sure.
But to me, it was like I was hurt because there was genuine. Again, but I first have to see it from his side of view. But he really did not understand, and a lot of people don't. White people don't understand. If someone says Black Lives Matter, they are not saying that other lives don't matter. And the text that actually Christy was saying to me, I don't know if you can probably explain it better than I can, but it was just, if it's personal because you were there. You went to the hospital when my dad was, was on his last breath. So imagine if after he passed, and and I'm dealing with, I was just like, hey, I call you, and I was like, hey, Sean, my dad just died. And if your response is, okay, Derek, well, all dads die.
Yeah.
All parents die.
Yeah.
What you're saying is true. All parents die.
Right. It's the emphasis.
But in the moment, when the wound is so raw for me, when I'm just like, oh, so I'm watching George Floyd, I'm watching, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Tatiana Jefferson. It's so raw, and I'm just saying, man, Black Lives Matter, and someone says, all lives matter. What she's saying is true.
Yeah.
But in the moment, when I'm seeing time after time after time of apparently Black life is not valued as much. If George's life mattered, one of those men would have said, that's enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
He says he can't breathe. Eric Garner, the original I Can't Breathe. Well, actually, he's not, because people have said that before.
Sure.
If it mattered, one person, if they just cut it in half, if he was just there for, really just, when you first had him immobile, it just whatever. If his life mattered, someone would have said, hey, that's enough. So we're just saying Black Lives Matter because we're seeing time after time where it appears it's not. So if someone says, I get what you're saying, but I just think all lives matter. In the moment, I'm so raw that I can't even acknowledge the truth of what you're saying, because it is true. Like, all lives matter. Blue lives matter. White, I get it.
Yeah. Red, yellow, black, and white.
But in the moment, when you look at the systemic, when you look at what's going on, the 1 in 3, all in that moment, I'm just trying to validate the fact that this skin matters.
Sure.
Not in the sense of it's because I'm precious in God's sight, and and so that to me, I wish that was conveyed more, because again, I had to check this myself, because I felt something rise up in me when I heard someone that I know say Blue Lives Matter, and he's right, but I don't know if he knew the depth of my pain, how insensitive that sounds in the moment. Just over coffee or something, he could talk about his love for the force and the men in blue, and I could be like, or if I'm a blue, because some police officers are black.
I know, right?
So it's not like it's
how confused are they? I mean, not confused. Attention. How attention are they?
It's not like all cops are white.
Exactly.
So and the black person probably like, oh, that's my brother. I bleed blue too.
Yeah.
So
he's got the both.
It's not about colors. Black, blue, all. It is about in the moment. Like right now, we're so raw. This is global. They're doing this in Australia, Paris, Canada. Probably taking it. It's the timing right now for someone to say, I don't understand. I think all lives matter. It just shows that their lens. They have not had too many dinners with a black person to really know. Sure. So that to me is it's frustrating that you're just thinking, it was never about usurping one race over that. It was just about validating us.
Okay. So I'm asking the question. So it's what you need to hear is validation. Would that be the validation?
I would say empathy. We need to because you don't go 0 to 60 to empathy. Like you actually have to walk into the shoes.
Sure.
So
Okay. That's good.
I'll take that first step to understand. Like someone, because again, it's your lens. I don't expect you to understand the whole black struggle.
Right.
I understand the whole. I'm just trying to get a job.
Yeah. I'm trying to feed my family struggle.
I just got laid off, and I got
Yeah. Sure.
I would need to hear, I'm willing to take that first step towards to have better empathy. It's a two-way street, but it's like if right now the hurting, and it goes back to, you know, the Good Samaritan, the person, you know, on the side of the road, the Levi and the priest, they're going to church. We see you hurting.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if they're mentioned in the parable, they saw him. It wasn't like they didn't see. He's hurting. He's bleeding. He got beaten up, and we're on our way to church.
Yeah.
It's the Samaritan. So I just feel like right now, a lot of black men are we're on the side of the road. We're not showing because we got to be tough and of course now emotions, you know. But it's like usually we're kind of like, you know, we kind of keep it even keel because I can't be angry black men because that's the stereotype.
Yeah, that'll get you in trouble, right there.
But we need people to say, hey, I see that you're hurting, and I want to know what can I do to better empathize. Because I get you're not going to empathize right away. You can have sympathy. You can't empathize authentically until you actually are in my shoes.
I love that.
But so what can I do to make that first step? Or how can we kind of just that, I don't know, so help me to just that sense of, you know, just that curious questioning, kind of just like, I really want to know, as opposed to, you know, I want to, and getting that firsthand one-on-one conversation. So to me, that's what I would want to hear and kind of, and I am hearing it, to be honest.
Sure.
People are reaching out.
Sure, absolutely.
Texting, you know, it's like, but I want, you know, but that's what we need to hear right now.
Okay, so I have a quick follow-up. I want to ask this. Because you and I are same age. We're not young men. We're not necessarily old men.
Right.
Yeah, right? But, you know, what does the younger generation, what do the younger men, the 20-somethings, because I would assume, this is an assumption, but I assume that a lot of the anger and the vitriol that we're seeing is from some of the younger generation people, the 20-somethings, who feel blocked or, you know, so what do they need to hear from somebody like me? Not that I'm going to solve the problem, but what do they need to hear from me or somebody like my father or my great, you know, what do they need to hear from us to make them feel heard or understood and valued?
You know, that age is so, you know, you have so much youth, you have so much energy,
passion,
you know, the Proverbs in the wisdom is with the gray hair, but the young men are for war. Like, because the people, the generals, and the wisdom, gray hair, they have the wisdom, they don't have the energy to go out and fight, you know, but they can counsel. And so I'm always struck by how young Dr. King was when he died. You know, 33. It's like all
really
he accomplished.
Wow.
In his 30s.
Yeah.
It's like, so what I would.
Or 20s, starting
in his 20s, right?
You know,
wow.
How young, and most movements happen by young, you know, because again, the energy. Like, how are you gonna mobilize and organize and on your later, I mean, just the energy, it's exhausting. So it's along the same lines. I mean, how can I empathize, but also a recognition of you, just a valid, knowing right now you have so much, people that, especially people that are maybe search discerning, but you have so much of that fire. How do you, maybe showing them maybe how to harness that, because I don't think you can't tell someone who's just like, simmer down, stop, like, you know, because that's, you know, it's almost like a thoroughbred.
Sure.
Yes,
he's gonna run. Yeah.
So empathy, and again, you know, I want to hear your side, but also maybe how do you channel that? Because if you channel that, if you direct that energy, that passion, you know, if it's unchecked, it just goes wherever, you know.
Right.
And right now, they're just
it is going
posting whatever,
because
you can't. I mean, I remember when I could stay up all night. I could still. I could just, you know, you had energy. So
don't you miss those days?
Yes and no. You know, but so I just think maybe how do you channel that? Maybe someone who kind of sees from God's perspective too. And kind of how do you channel it? Because people are really gifted, very creative in how they want to.
Sure.
Just like me, you know, because it's not just voting, but it's more than voting. It's just it's it's the hearts really, but if they have so much passion that I just think someone who kind of maybe can sort of help them to, you know, and not from a I've been there and when I was, but more of just like I see you again. It goes like this develop. I see you.
I see you.
So many of us we don't feel we're invisible. We just feel like invisible or profiled, or just like, so you see me, but you just see me as one. So especially when you're young, when you're trying to find your identity, because I think when you're maybe our age, you kind of maybe, I mean, there's no age to it, but it's usually if you've kind of gone through some things, you kind of have a little better grasp on really what fulfills you, what your call is. When you're in your 20s, everything, you're just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so, and on top of that, now it's like the oppression, and they just feel like they have to take on the fight from Dr. King and the fight. It's like, you just, yes, the passion is there, but how do you, empathy, validation, and how do you, do you need resources? How can I channel something where you can not harness it, but just maybe direct it in a way that is more fruitful than just shouting into the wind,
Sure.
So.
Yeah. Chris, do you have anything you want to add to this? I know you are, like I said before, have a very unique perspective, being a wife in a biracial relationship, and so you do have wisdom in something, and I know you heard the question, so anything you want to add to this as we kind of go through?
I mean, something that popped in my head. I mean, I'm a social worker, so I have that background, so that's where a lot of my learning came from, actually, was through my classes and learning about diversity and just different cultures, and that helped me get a lot of understanding, I feel like. And so something that was helpful for me in understanding like the Black community is that's the only race that didn't come here voluntarily, and I think that has really played out in the systemic racism, because every other racial group came here as immigrants or
came here by choice.
Native Americans who were already here, those kind of things, right? Like they all came by choice, whereas the African Americans, right, that came over as slaves, like they were not given that choice, and so it just has played out in history of how they've been kept under control and pressed down. So I feel like that gives some understanding to why the Black community feels like their issues are individual to them and not any other minority group. That they have a different struggle than
that is interesting.
Than other groups do.
I love that. I love that.
No, I do. Yeah, no, actually,
I would add to that.
I definitely agree with that, because it is, some things are passed down. Like if someone,
Sure.
I do things now. I'm like, oh, that's just like my dad did. And
right. No, I
so
did. Yeah.
So I just imagine, and not physically, but just your traits, your predispositions. So if people that came over here in force, and then when they're over here, and all the, we know the history, and so it's like, it's still being passed down, like, unless someone has encounters and generational curses and breaking it and knows who they are in Christ, and even then, you are in Christ, you still have to deal with the, just the weight of that sometimes. So I just think that is, it's a real issue, because it's like people, Black people are like, why are you so angry? But why are you so angry? Like, you're not slaves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that long ago, and stuff gets passed.
It does. It really wasn't. You think it's? I mean,
right. You think it was hundreds of years, and yes, maybe the actual, Civil War and all that, but just the effects. Like I said,
I think that's great. Yeah.
They still had sit-ins.
Yeah.
It's and then
Jim
Crow and
well, the thought I was thinking about is, we have a lot of tornadoes here in Texas, or a hurricane. Hurricane hits one day, but the effects of it can be years. Like New Orleans getting hit by Katrina. They got hit. That was years for them to get back what was stolen. So why wouldn't that same natural So the same thing we see in the natural, why wouldn't that also be with regards to the issue of race, that it's not so much that there is racism now. I'm not saying there should not be, but it's the effects of the racism is still playing out, and that is an issue. And until we address the systemic part of it, we're going to keep hitting this, and we're going to keep and it sounds like, just in kind of processing the whole deal, that it's until we start, for lack of a better term, eating together, right, getting together, until we, and that's not going to solve all the problems. But you gotta
start somewhere.
Start right.
Somewhere, exactly.
You're passionate about identity. It's like, I'm just thinking now, think of all in slavery, think of all the babies that were born ripped from their mother's arms.
Absolutely.
And so really, yes, they go somewhere and then they marry and have kids, but the identity, I mean, we know this, if someone is as an orphan in foster care, that identity, they just feel like
it's completely stolen.
So other cultures, they can trace their lineage back to, like, the family crest.
Yeah, you go back. Yeah, that's
and
what
so
it is.
they have this history, they have this pride. A lot of black men, some of this ancestry.com, like, we don't know. I don't know.
You don't know 3 generations back.
Well, our family on my mom's side, actually, I have traced back to the side that came over in South Carolina, but even beyond then, who were her, like?
Yeah, where did she come from?
Identity, right? And of course, right, and Christ, we understand the identity of Him, but it's so just good. Naturally, like, if you can imagine someone who's adopted or orphaned, they're just like, they wrestled that their whole life.
Yes.
Was I not wanted? And so
yes.
As a culture, you're just like, we don't, that ripples. It's a silent ripple, but it ripples, and and I think that, and that's a tough thing, like I said, but it just, that's first step of, hey, I see you, like, that pain, I see that, I put my arm around you, hey man, I'm gonna buy you some dinner, let's just and I think it's a small step, but that can lead somewhere, and then,
Yeah. What is it? The journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, right? So while this looks daunting and impossible and almost like, why even should I care? The point is, if we're going to go somewhere, we got to take the first step on both sides of the color. I don't know if color wall is the right thing, but the side that, we've got to each both take that first step, and especially as a white person, it would behoove me to take the initiative. I'm just my thoughts that I shouldn't wait for a black person to come to me and say, hey, I need to find them, and when I can do that, when I as a white person can find that person, a person of color, so to speak, doesn't matter whether they're black, it doesn't matter, anybody. If I can find them and I can begin the process, the image in my mind was almost like a ski boat, right? That if I throw that line to him and I start pulling him, I'm pulling him into my momentum, and so he now gets to be a part of my life. And not that I'm trying to, but it's like now I get to be a part of his life, and he gets to be a part of my life. And now all of a sudden, that stuff that's there, we can begin to work on and bring unity together. I don't know if that's the right picture, but it's just kind of the thing.
We don't change the world; we change our world.
Yes, that's wonderful.
George Floyd is changing. But there are exceptions. But typically, you don't do something that has ripples that affects every. That's Jesus Christ and the disciples upset. Turns his up and down.
Yeah.
Typically, you're not going to do something tomorrow. Typically, that's going to be a newscast in Australia.
Sure,
right?
absolutely.
But your world,
my world,
you can change that world. And so and you don't know who you can affect in that world. Yeah. And so, it's a little cliche-ish, but that is, I can't think of it as I'm changing, because it's so huge that it's going to take God. And the fact is, there's been racism and original sin since the days of, Cain rising against people. It's biblical, right?
There's slaves in the Old Testament, right?
The root of it is division, spirit of division. So, you're not gonna just do something that's gonna overturn this spirit of division. I mean, it's, because we know the world's getting darker and men are growing colder. But in your world, we can be light. I can change. You know, if I can just change someone else's lens just a little bit to kind of see my view, and also I can change my view to see their. I mean, that's
There's some power there. There's some power there. Well, I want to thank y'all so much for taking the time, and you guys that I'm not sure exactly. Well, I won't say that. I'll cut that out. But you know, thank y'all so much for staying with us, and this is probably a part of a larger thing that we are going to see going on, and I don't know how long it's going to take, and this just could be a fun personal project for me. I don't know, but thank you so much, Derek and Christy, for the conversation, and all I can say is let's do it. Let's take that first step, and let's begin to be a part of one another's lives in a way so that not only again, we're not condoning violence, we're not condoning any of that. You know, we're not saying police officers right. We're not saying the looting is all. We're not saying any of that's right. But what we are saying is we need to start looking and valuing one another. So, anyways, bless you guys. We'll see y'all next week. Again, thank you. See y'all later. Bye.